discussion about processed and packaged foods. From an Ayurvedic perspective, there are several concepts to start out with. Ahara, Anna, and Bhojan. So many people think Ahara means food, Anna means food, and Bhojana means meals. But there are some nuances that the Ayurvedic Shastras discussed that have largely been overlooked in the attempt to translate and make things easier and dumb things down in order for a larger audience to be able to understand. But in Ayurvedic Vaidya world, we need to remember those nuances. So we talk about ahara, and ahara is everything that you take in. It is not just food. It is everything that you take in. It is the sound that you take in. It is what you see. It is everything that you ingest or bring in to your essence of your body. And that means your physical body, but it's also your mental and emotional body. So if someone yells at you, that is also part of your ahara. If someone talks to you or plays music to you, that is ahara. And that which you don't lose or ahara, is that which you bring in. So think about whatever you bring in the context of food that we're going to talk about. Anna is nourishing food. It's those nutriments that you actually bring in that are going to help build your dhatus and build your physical structure, your mental structure, your emotional structure. So your Anna is not just food, although we talk about it as food, and Annapurna Devi is the person that feeds us. But we are fed in the sense that anything that we take in that is nourishing our tissues is only that which feeds us. The rest of everything is not actually food. And bhojan is the meal, but it is actually that sophisticated interplay of everything you put together in that one meal, on a plate or on a leaf or in a bowl, that which you're going to consume together. So certain foods that are incompatible, that should not be eaten together, should not be together in that bhojan. With these three topics understood, there are a few questions that we are going to discuss in this panel called Is Processed Packaged Food Ayurvedic? On day 2, session 2 of the Ayurveda Conversations, the Tadvidya Sambhasha that's happening at the AVP campus on the 18th to 20th August, 2023. And one of the points that my co-panel members and I, the 8 of us, are going to discuss is, there are 4 questions mainly, but one is, does adding an Ayurveda ingredient to food make the food Ayurvedic? What is Ayurvedic? If you think that a banana or a eggplant or a particular food item is Ayurvedic, sorry. The way that the Shastras have been understood is that if you look at any dravya, any substance, from the point of view of its doshas, dhatus, the doshas in the food and how it affects the dhatus of the human body, and how it goes into our srotas, how it improves our ojas or not, how it creates ama or helps our agni. These are the things that make it Ayurvedic. Certainly every substance, every dravya can be seen in Ayurveda as some kind of either medicinal effect or poisonous effect. And it just depends on the dose, the combinations, and how it's processed. And so we can't just say that adding something makes it Ayurvedic. It changes the doshas. It might change the medicinal or the poison profile, but that depends on the person that's thinking about that particular entity of food and how it is. So I have a saying, there are 3 opportunities each day to medicate yourself. They are called breakfast, lunch, and dinner. There are 3 opportunities every day to poison yourself. They are called breakfast, lunch, and dinner. And how we choose those foods is what really matters. A piece of jackfruit that is in a can that's BPA lined and has carcinogens in it for preserving freshness is not the same as picking a live jackfruit from the tree at the right season and opening it with mantra and then pulling out the jackfruit, the sweet jackfruit, and then consuming it fresh. They're completely two different experiences. And if we are going to say that, well, it's not convenient, I want to have the jackfruit in Punjab and not in Karnataka, then we have to consider that the conveniences of the modern day that are trying to get us what we want, where we want, when we want, maybe that's not so Ayurvedic. Maybe that's not what's good for our bodies and our minds. So we have to remember that ingredients have a context. The next issue we're going to talk about is how do packaged foods justify that every individual is unique and has different needs? You know, we can combine different foods and we can put them together in different ways and use them to shift the doshas. Anything that you take in that has dravya, that has an effect on vata, pitta, kapha, can be combined in a slightly different way to make a new combination or to make that combination just right to alter your vata, pitta, kapha in the direction it needs, to bring up your agni, to digest or take out your ama. And the combinations of different ingredients that can do that are the magic of using different foods. Overall, should we be using packaged foods? If we can avoid it, we shouldn't. But the reality today, especially if you live in an urban setting and live the modern lifestyle, is that you will be eating some packaged foods. And actually, if you go and look at the wealthiest families, wealth is not about money. It's about the availability of nutriment. And those families make their food fresh. They do not use refrigerators to store things, and they use sourced ingredients and spend their money there. That is true wealth. The next question is, can we apply Tridosha and Triguna to the packaged and processed meals? Absolutely. The energy in food is something that is overlooked now today by the people in the chemical and industrial and the packaged pharmaceutical side of the world. They think that food is just about the chemical, the carbohydrate, fat, and protein, about the calorie value, and they don't acknowledge that it is about the energy of the food, how close it is located to the time that it was prana, either growing in the soil of the earth or part of the nature. And they don't account for the time that it's been separated from that prana and then stored or harvested or processed or whatever level of movement from that place and time into your mouth. And that's really going to make a difference about the sattva, rajas, tamas quality. Most of what we're writing, most of what we're translating from the Shastras, what they've written is about fresh foods, because that's what they had several thousand years ago. They did do some preserving, but they added those achars or those madhya or some kashaya. They added those in very small quantity compared to the large quantity of ahara or anna that they were taking in their bhojan, their meal. So if we apply the doshas and the gunas to the food, we will absolutely come out short with packaged foods and certainly with processed foods. And there is a place where we need to look at what we're doing with processed foods. There's a question that we'll discuss that refers to the parameters to make packaged and processed foods Ayurvedic. And this is a whole mess, because the people that are hired, in fact, by Ayurvedic manufacturers are people that have been through food chemical, food industry, food chemistry, but not been through the training of Ayurveda that talks about prana and about the doshas and the gunas and the shrotas and the ojas, and those foods that promote those in our bodies. So what they are looking at is an independent standing food product that has a value based on some parameter that is certainly not about connecting it with the human body. So when we have parameters that talk about when that fruit was picked, during the full moon or during Amavasya or Ekadashi, which season it was picked in, how it was ripened, either on the tree or in a crate, moving across on a truck across the continent to the place where it'll be sold. You know, they pick green bananas and let them ripen using all kind of processes, right? And that affects the way that that food actually envelops its energy into your body when it arrives, when you bite on that banana, or when you eat that rice. That rice, which is made by a hybrid form and put into a processing that is polishing it or taking off the husk or parboiling it. There are so many processes in rice that make it an actual non-nutritive. And we don't even think about those things. We buy the brand name rice because it smells good, not realizing. However, again, back to the wealthy. The wealthiest people in India source their rice from land that they own a share of, and they go every month and they get the rice. Or they have it harvested, label it, and wait 6 months until the rice is actually medicinal. And then they bring it to their home. Maybe 25 kilos of rice is enough for the month. So they go once a month and bring that rice. If you have wheat, go and get the godhuma, the wheat berry, and crush it yourself in a stone grinder that is using wood and stone and not metal, which heats it up. You will get a different godhuma, different wheat. If someone says, oh, I can't be worried about that, don't worry about it. But then don't call it Ayurvedic. If you're going to eat meats are Ayurvedic. They are medicinal, but make sure you take them from the right kind of animals, treat the animal in the right way, harvest it in the right way, and then process the meat in the right way so that it does have the effect that it's intended to build up your mamsa dhatu. Meat is one of the best ways to bring up the mamsa, but only if it's harvested and processed correctly. So when we say processed, are we talking about the processing of Ayurveda that talked about the ways in which we change the doshas through various processes of fire and water and mixing of other ingredients? Or are we talking about adding in all kinds of preservatives and extracting oils and then claiming that those are full Ayurvedic foods? A great example is turmeric. Curcumin is not turmeric. Curcumin is one of the chemicals in turmeric. And if you standardize a compound to curcumin, you are not going to get the effect that you will from haridra, or the turmeric rhizome that you can take and use. Modern turmeric takes those, boils them, cures them, takes out the oil and the color, leaves a little bit in, and says it's still 100% turmeric, there's nothing else added. But they don't talk about what's subtracted. And so we get turmeric on the market and in the powder form that is not what the farmer gets. And if you want to find real turmeric, go and see, taste it, and compare it to what you buy from your favorite brand powder. This can be true of every spice, every grain, every dal or legume, what we call dals. It can be true of every seed, every oil, every fruit, every vegetable. You have to know how foods are made, how they are harvested, how they are stored, how they are then brought to market. And that is going to tell you what the processing is. And then when they package it, it can be organic, but if you put it into a piece of plastic and you inject gas into it that is going to keep it fresh, then that is not natural. There is something chemically being added, and we have yet to know what the effect of that extra nitrogen or carbon dioxide or whatever air that is injected in, what that actually does to the food product and what that does inside our body. There is a lot of science about this. There are textbooks written for food industry students, and the chemical engineering and food engineering people know a whole lot. One of my colleagues has worked in this field for a large major Indian conglomerate, and says that after he started working in those factories, he threw out so much of what is in his kitchen because he realized how badly and fakely the food is made. And he reverted to what? He reverted back to what his grandmother makes. And so now he eats that food freshly made and takes the time to source those foods freshly so that his processing is more in line with what was done before. And he has noticed that his joint pains are less. His hair has started growing in. His gut is in a better place. His food and energy from eating are much higher than it was before, after he had eaten food. And he notices his sleep is better. And these signs and symptoms really tell us more about health. So these are some thoughts about processed and packaged foods and how they are Ayurvedic or non-Ayurvedic. And we can discuss more and more about how to make them more Ayurvedic, with the key being that we need to understand the inner steps that are not discussed in the public about how our foods are made. And then we can have a bigger discussion on what policies need to change in order to protect the health of the public.